the Economic Empowerment Chair, I am facilitating Real Talk webinars on almost a monthly basis that talk about the different overlaps between events in our community or different wealth building opportunities that can empower our community to build that wealth. So here are some things I want you guys to walk away with by the time you end this webinar. I want you to understand different ways to engage with the incoming customer base for the FIFA World Cup here in the Atlanta area. I want you to identify several opportunities for yourself as a small business owner or to leverage the resources provided to you by the city for economic success. And I want you to connect with other like-minded people who want to understand what kind of economic benefits this tourism boom has to offer. So, to my left, I have three wonderful panelists, and I'd like to take this time to introduce them. We have Natalie L. Jones, who serves as the Beltline Business Solutions Manager for Atlanta Beltline Incorporated. We have Joe Gums, owner and construction project manager of MME Consulting, LLC. And we also have Jeremy Salley, founder and partner of Bridge Gap Supports. Starting with Natalie L. Jones. She is a dynamic leader who currently drives economic growth and community throughout Atlanta. Her current role within the Beltline Business Solutions Office has her leading the strategy development for services meant to scale businesses across the 22-mile Beltline corridor. Prior to this, Natalie was a manager of the Business Facade Partnership Grant Program and provided critical development and execution of the Beltline's workforce strategy. She has consistently driven economic impact via public policy before her role with the Beltline, which includes helping maintain Atlanta's competitive position as a global business hub. Please give a hand clap for Natalie L. Jones. Next, we have Joe Gums, owner and construction project manager of MME Consulting, LLC. He is a strong advocate for customer success with over 10 years of experience in project management. His previous roles at Microsoft, Fiserv, and PCC Technology Group shaped his market research, revenue lead generation, and business operation skills that he utilizes today. He is no stranger to cross-functional collaboration or issue resolution, and thus is well-positioned to bring great insights when serving homeowners through the operation of his residential construction and home renovation business. Please give a hand clap for Mr. Joe Gums. And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Jeremy Salley, founder and partner of Bridge Gap Sports. Jeremy, a FIFA Masters graduate, is no stranger to the competitive sports space. His previous experience with Delta Airlines and Collegiate Consulting helped him navigate large customer bases and needs, while also advising budgets that ranged from $5 to $55 million. He understands the transformative impact that sports can have on the community, both on and off the field. Please give a hand clap to Mr. Jeremy Salley. So we're going to talk about either grants or opportunities open to small businesses and small business owners. We're going to also talk about the Beltline's pivotal role for the World Cup and for the many years to come here in the Atlanta community. And lastly, opportunities for homeowners or property owners to benefit from the increased tourism. So we're going to open it up to a few prepared questions for our panelists. And I'm going to start out with this one. Atlanta is one of a handful of U.S. host cities. In your respective fields, what does it mean to be selected for an event of this magnitude? And what's the window of opportunity that most people don't realize exists? All right.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for having us, especially having me here. Nelson, I've known for years, and thank you so much for the opportunity to go forward. I think the best way to start with it is, in my role and the work I do with my agency, which is both a player agency and also consulting agency here in North America, I've had the privilege to go to every World Cup city except for Vancouver over the past year. This past week, I'm not even joking. I woke up this morning in Houston, Texas. Woke up yesterday morning in Salt Lake City, Utah. Started the week in Austin, Texas, and was also in San Francisco at the same time. So it's a life in this world, particularly right now, that's very fast and very much on the road. And just walking through Bush and Continental this morning, just the magnitude of the world stage the magnitude of what it means for the United States, Canada, and Mexico to be involved and ingrained into the culture from the soccer landscape to be entrusted, particularly with one of the very few events that does bring the world together. Something that we have to take in consideration. Never in my life, and hopefully it does happen later in my lifetime, would I think that the Ben Stadium around the corner from where I was born will be hosting semifinal, which is significant in comparison where you look at us in Dallas, not New York, not Los Angeles, to the semifinal, even though New York's hosting the final. But being the cities that are entrusted with that magnitude of some of the greatest stars and world stars, particularly important dignitaries that will be here for that game, along with the other games that are going to be coming in with the nations of Saudi Arabia, such as Spain, such as Cabo Verde, Uzbekistan, Haiti, Morocco, that will be here to showcase the greatness of what Atlanta is. The magnitude is significant as Atlanta continues to grow from what I think is current standing as an alpha minus city within the standpoint on the global scale is absolutely wonderful. And that's my answer to it. Great answer.
Yes, great answer. Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you all about the Beltline and some of the things that we have in the pipeline right now. But to answer the question, I will say that I will echo his sentiments that it's a really huge deal for us to host an international event like the World Cup. And I harken back to Ambassador Young when we were pitching for the Olympics in 1996, the Olympics that came to Atlanta. And he said that he wanted to make Atlanta the next great, best international city. I think that we've come a long way since 1996. In a previous world, I worked in the global commerce space. So I was responsible for doing business development for international companies that had operations here within Metro Atlanta. And I can tell you that international companies pay attention to things like this. It says a lot about our infrastructure and our ability to be able to house and move so many people for an event like this, which is why we continue to get awarded events like this. So obviously we have the World Cup coming, 14 days now? Yes, it's crazy. And then we'll have the Super Bowl here in a few years. I think we're also hosting the NCAA men's final. We've had MLB All-Star Game. We've had a Super Bowl before. So as the city is putting together pitch packages, they are elevating all of the great work that the entire city of Atlanta does to bring events like this to Atlanta. And so I think that it's a true testament. I think it's a true testament to how we all work together to make big events like this happen.
For me, the value that I see from it is the amount of collaboration that you're going to experience. Excuse me. What I'm seeing is a vast amount of not just companies, but individuals working together from different backgrounds. And that's really what the World Cup is about. Everybody's coming together from different companies to enjoy one thing, football, right? It's a beautiful experience. It's beautiful to see. But more than anything, it actually helps everyone's family. From a construction perspective, what we're seeing is one hand washes the other. Multiple agencies are coming together saying, hey, I don't mind subbing this to you, right? Because I'm already eating over here, right? Whether it's painting over here, tile work over there, plumbing over there, everybody's working together for one goal. We're going to get this customer taken care of. We're going to pivot to the next one, and we're going to do that one together as well. And it also creates and promotes a lot of longevity and partnership, which I'll touch on later on. But that's one of the biggest things for me, collaboration, right? It's like the ultimate American dream. We're a melting pot. From an organization level, that's what we dream to be, aspire to be, right? So we're on track with the World Cup. It's a beautiful thing to experience. I'm benefiting from it. I'm pretty sure everybody else is. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you for those wonderful answers. And Joe, I must say you began to segue into the next question. So I'm going to go ahead and start with you. Yeah, a little bit, just a little bit. FIFA World Cup tourism is distinct from other major events, and you guys already highlighted in terms of the cross collaboration and the international audience and the international stage that we're now on. So how does that change how your organization or industry is preparing? I'll start with Joe, and then we'll come back to Jeremy.
Okay. So we've known for a while now that the World Cup was coming to Atlanta. Okay. And many organizations, right, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a barbershop, whether it's a hair salon, whether it's a nail salon, it doesn't matter. Many organizations have also been prepping for this because they understand the influx that is about to hit the city. One of the biggest things that we work with our customers on is not going for a small hype, right? But actual the longevity of it. So what can we do to ensure that, hey, you don't just have a Puerto Rican flag on the wall because Puerto Rico is playing next week, right? What about if it's a multicultural wall instead, right? That highlights multiple flags. You're not just welcoming one team, you're welcoming multiple, right? But what if we also partner with the restaurant next door, right? To say, hey, we're going to create a path in the backyard that connects you both and extend your actual back porch, right? So that if you're going from that restaurant, you can actually come into this supermarket, right? Small things like that is how we help customers prepare for what's to come. It seems so small, but it's impactful because it's welcoming to everybody else. Now, when you're talking about logistics, we're talking about materials, we're talking about permits, we're talking about labor. That takes a bit more planning and restructuring, but that's not on our customers, right? That's on us. So the way we prepare for that is we market our business. Okay. We go community by community. We hand out what we're doing. We show people where we're actually putting into these companies, but also into the community. Okay. And then we create a plan with them. It doesn't take anything to sit down and say, hey, here's where you are. Tell me where you like to go. Not just for the World Cup, but post World Cup. Because that's one of the biggest things that I think Atlanta needs to benefit from is post World Cup. We saw the hype in 96. Sensational. What after? Right? So let's focus on after everybody leaves, after all those flights are gone, what can we do to retain that spirit? And that's where we partner with communities, we partner with people, and we show customers how to collaborate with other companies so that they can ensure that, hey, it's not just with you and I, the construction guy, it's with you and your neighbor, right? Because that's what it's about. It's about creating this community to make profit, but to also pour back into it so that we can keep it going, so that there can be another World Cup, maybe 10, 20 years from now, but here again, right? So that's what we do. We like to showcase how to properly prepare, whether it's permits, materials, subcontractors, partnerships, whatever the case is. We have to actually sit down and show our customers how this can be done in a way that not just benefits you short term, but long term.
Yeah, sure. Definitely, I agree with that 100% what Joe's saying. I think one of the biggest things also, I think from our perspective on like the sporting play, so on the sporting side, I think on the federational piece, which is huge. I'll give you personal examples for today, even so. Of course, with FIFA, I think people, when you talk about these large organizations on the sports side, like the federations such as U.S. Soccer or FIFA, we forget these are people that are working at these organizations. And so, I mean, as a FIFA Master alum, 10% of all FIFA employees are alums of the program. And so it's funny, as one of the Americans involved with this, where, you know, for me, two of my favorite people from the program both happen to be from Central and South America. The little things that really do take a hit and really are the impactful parts, where one will be staying with me before he starts his role based here in Atlanta, particularly on the FIFA side. We're talking about just him getting his flight and what to do for his one day before he hops over to Colombia, then go back to Atlanta, and then the things about that. Another one who will be running quite a bit of things in Houston, and kind of giving the recommendation of my favorite barbecue spot, like I just went to yesterday, a Michelin star barbecue spot J Bar, I'm not even giving a shout. Great barbecue. It's been on my mind. It's been on my mind since I had it last night, and just every time I go there. But those little things there. I think a good example for Atlanta today is Uzbekistan. Most people cannot put it on the map, flat out. There's no way around it. I think for many Americans, it will be an eye opener to it, as they are the team that will be based here in Atlanta at Atlanta United. That doesn't just come out of nowhere. Let's put it that way. For most of the reasons, whether it be, I know my experience from the FIFA Master side, but also we forget that Uzbekistan's played in Atlanta before. They played Mexico in a wonderful draw. There is a familiarity with that. And the first thing you think is, well, okay, how do you accommodate the Uzbeks, right? A team that I think is going to be a dark horse through this tournament. But how do you do it with the customs? Do a team that has a lot of guys that are playing in European competition today? What do you do when we talk about on the both the domestic and international piece of trying to level that for a World Cup like this? One of the biggest things has always been, for a lot of countries that are coming in, even newer ones that are coming for their first time to a World Cup, is how do you get both the federations and also, in many cases, to be very frank, the governments, the embassies, the diplomats that are here, and to make them accustomed as well, because they're not just coming alone. A good example of that has been, I know with the U.S. playing against Belgium and Portugal, a lot of people forgot that it's not just the Belgian team coming in. They're flying over straight to Atlanta from their respective cities they're playing in, and, again, a few days in, but you're also bringing the embassy, particularly in DC, and with the consulate here in Atlanta as well. And the hosting of Belgian companies, the hosting of Portuguese companies, and what the foresight is for a lot of folks that are also prospectively looking into Atlanta as a home. One of the experiences that I had was another alum who works in the sports industry, who's Belgian. I just met him at the High Museum about his experience, particularly in Atlanta. It was his first time. And, what did he talk about with what he's heard from the embassy, from the consulate, what he's talked about for his first time here? We got beat. There's no way around it. Belgium was better done that day. But the implementation of someone who's looking to add to a U.S. office, and Atlanta being on that idea, because one, all it takes is a good walk down Peachtree, go to the High, and go walk down to the Western. It was enough to say, hey, I think there's something here, and something that we have to remember as this goes forward in the next 10, 15 years. Oh, and one more thing. We are hosting, hopefully, for 31 for the Women's World Cup here in Atlanta, for the Women's World Cup. Yeah, that's coming around the corner. So I wouldn't be shocking if Atlanta was to still be that, if everything goes the way it should be.
Thanks for that nice preview right there, and some shameless plugs about barbecue. The Emerging 100 of North Metro Atlanta is not sponsored by this barbecue spot. I just want to put that on the record. No, that's all right. That's all right. But these are great opportunities to really explore the economic opportunity that really comes with this tourism boom. And Natalie, I wanted to ask you the specific question. There's often a gap between the economic projections announced for a major event and what actually reaches small and minority-owned businesses. What specific mechanisms are in place to close that gap in Atlanta?
So first of all, I want to state how weird this is for me to be holding a microphone and not hear like my voice in the back. So that's really interesting. But no, I can talk about this from a Beltline perspective. So yeah, sure, absolutely right. There are a lot of economic projections that come out when large events like this come to the city. And it's usually the same players that you see, your big time, local, big Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, even regional chains, companies that have multiple locations within Atlanta. But what we're focused on at the Beltline and the Business Solutions Office is really focused on those legacy businesses that have been here prior to when the Beltline was even thought about. And so we try to create programming that helps build capacity for those businesses. And we're talking about businesses that have less than 3 employees, right? A lot of solopreneurs. I think the stat is like 94% of all Black-owned businesses in Atlanta are solopreneurs. That's a large percent percentage. And so our programs help build the capacity for those businesses to grow. So we offer opportunities within an accelerator called Beltline Business Ventures. That's a 3-month program where we focus on things like operational capacity. We teach them about how to create a strategic growth plan. We teach them about a P&L statement, how to negotiate a commercial lease, because that is a whole thing within itself. But we try to really meet businesses where they are, and recognize that a lot of the things that it takes to be successful, a lot of our mom and pop businesses may not have been exposed to those things. So we try to shed light on how to be successful. And I would say that part of what we're doing is we're creating opportunities for local businesses. So we're going to be having an event at Pittsburgh Yards that I'll talk about here a little later, where we're inviting local vendors to apply to be a part of what we're calling Beltline Fest. We also have our Beltline Marketplace program, which, if you're familiar, they are container spaces. We have them in 4 different locations around the Beltline, but we're going to be activating those on 5 different days. And I believe we have about 400 spots for small businesses to be able to participate while the visitors from the World Cup is here. And I also want to piggyback on something that you said earlier about what happens after the World Cup, right? So I always try to squeeze in the fact that a lot of the programming that we're doing at the Beltline is not for World Cup. It is for resiliency. And we want to make sure that while it's important for our business owners to be able to capitalize and benefit from the economic boom that's going to come from a event like a World Cup, we also want to know, well, what happens when all those people go home? How are you still serving your community? So we focus a lot on that as well.
Awesome. So I also want to talk about timelines. And Joe, as a project manager, I know you are aware of how important adhering to timelines are. So my next question is, construction timelines for major events are notoriously compressed, as we've probably all seen with the recent 285 construction. So what are the risk factors you're managing right now? And how do supply chain and how do supply chain and labor constraints factor into the equation?
Solid question. And my answer is going to go from left to right, back to the center. I promise you. Timelines are very important when you are trying to deliver someone's dream into a reality. You're not only dealing with the government, which is permits, right? You're also dealing with logistics, which is materials, okay, and supplies. One of the biggest things that I've learned throughout this endeavor is be on time with everything, right? Ensure that you have a proper plan in place as well as a contingency plan, okay? Having multiple sources is actually the best thing you can do. For example, if it's paint, I'm going to go to Sherwin-Williams every day. But guess what? If Sherwin-Williams doesn't have what I need today, and I need it today, I have Benjamin Moore as well. So creating those partnership with local spots is really where the sweet spot is. And I'm not saying with one local spot. I'm talking about with a community, right? A community at large, because we are dealing with multiple communities. Right? Because what's Hateville is not the West Side. Okay? Does that make sense? Every community is different, has their own entity, and you have to understand what that looks like when you're going in there trying to do business. But I'm also a sucker, right? Like, I'll be honest with you. Oh my gosh, I'm so sweet. But look, timeline is a thing, and I love to see small businesses thrive. I'm talking about I'd love to see it. I'd rather go to a small mom and pop owned bagel spot versus Dunkin' Donuts any day. That's just me. But that's because I'll work with them. The World Cup is coming. Hey, I've been in here 5 times this month already. Your floors look the same. Are you planning on repairing these floors for like the influx of people that are about to come so that they can continue coming? I don't have the money right now. But what about this? Get the material. You can pay me for the labor over the next 3 to 5 months, and I'll just add on 7 to 12% on it. Partnership. You get what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, the labor is taken care of by my team. I can work with my team because my team is from those communities. They want to see those communities grow. And at the end of the day, they're still getting paid. Okay? We have enough work to go around. What I care about more is seeing that business, that small business, be here for the next 10 years so that I can take my kids and say, hey, this is where we're going today. If that's our Sunday spot or our monthly spot, whatever the case is. Does that make sense? So permits, logistics, and dealing with people. That's your major timelines there. And then, of course, the weather. It's I appreciate everyone's need to get something done when they want it to be done. But if you want the exterior of your home painted in April, you've never heard April showers bring May flowers. Okay. That's a tough one, but I'll work with you. Okay. I'll look at the weather. I'll plan it out. I'll have my team go. We'll make sure everything is dried up before we, start scraping stuff off and repairing to then paint. But work with me on the timeline because I can't control Mother Nature, right? So that's the only thing that really draws for concern. But other than that, just keep a plan B at all times. Have those working relationships with the large suppliers, right? So like the Home Depots, the Lowe's, the local lumber yard. That's your sweet spot as well, okay? A lot of people don't understand that. Even if you're just building out a backyard something, whatever, the shed, your local lumber yards are actually cheaper than Home Depot and Lowe's. Their delivery is cheaper, but they're just not local to everybody. Does that make sense? But if you have a partnership, a working partnership with an account manager or one of the regular managers at a Home Depot or Lowe's, anything that I bring to them that's over $2,000, I'm immediately getting at least 10% off on. And immediately getting rapid shipping to that because now I have a working relationship with you. You understand the need for my business to keep thriving because I keep bringing business to you. Because now I'm going to take it to somebody else. I made that very clear, right? Because at the end of the day, it's business. So one hand washes the other. That's what I was talking about, right? We understand the need that we have. We understand the customers that we have because while we like to wait, our customers don't. Okay. So you have to really go in somewhere, shake someone's hand, speak with them, and develop a relationship so that maybe sometimes, hey, hello, what's the update on my permit? Oh, yeah, no problem. Things like that. That goes a long way. All right.
Thank you. You began to talk about the circulation of the dollar in the community, which is a very, very paramount topic we talk about in economic empowerment all the time. The number of times that the dollar can circulate in your community before it leaves and is spent elsewhere. So, Jeremy, I want to ask you specifically, because you have the unique perspective of completing the FIFA Master's education. This education trains people to see sports as an economic ecosystem. And so it's not just entertainment. So walk us through the revenue architecture of a World Cup host city. Where does money actually flow and who captures it?
Definitely. I think the best way to describe it is kind of setting foot for where we are today with 2026 and how this is. I think we have to start with the first thing is that this World Cup, for all of the good and to be very frank about it, the very bad of it, comes from the fact that this is the first time this World Cup has been done in this type of system in almost 12 years. The last time it was done towards this type of way was in Brazil in 2014. And what I'm talking about is you talk about the local organizing committees for every World Cup city, right? So to give Atlanta, and every city, it's very different in how they approach it. I'll give examples of Atlanta and Seattle, right? Just one of my clients is on my mind right now with his situation. So Seattle being a much more public one, very much so with the government of the state of Washington and with King County and the city of Seattle If you fart in a meeting, it will be on public record, to be very fair and frank about it, which is something that many sport organizations are not used to the same level, but the level of accountability has been properly done with that, right? So, for example, that in comparison to Atlanta for local organizing committee, and this is important to mention here, where is a more public-private partnership. The way that our system is, particularly with Mercedes-Benz Stadium, now Atlanta Stadium, sure, but the way that goes through there, the relationship Atlanta has with U.S. Soccer, the relationship it has with our business community in the city of Atlanta is very unique and much more straightforward and streamlined, and less in the public eye. And so what that means in comparison is, and this goes back to how its revenue is shared, is FIFA, essentially, this is the big daddy for FIFA's revenues. 90% of all revenue, and I know President Fatino mentions a lot of people ridicule it, but it's the truth of the matter. And we look at FIFA's actual numbers, where 90% of all revenue is put back into football, soccer, which people think, oh, that means the private jet's going forward here and there, but it actually is put back into the FIFA Forward program, which is significantly, as someone works with on a day-to-day basis with my clients in the federation and the players, is lifeline. And so the money comes from different pockets, whether you're talking about particularly in ticket sales, which is controlled by FIFA. And in this case, a little bit unique of how reselling tickets and the resell in the secondhand ticket market in the United States compared to other countries, like it's banned in the United Kingdom, for example, or limited in Mexico. How that's now taken, and of course has been the critique of FIFA, has been how they've handled that, because once again, that's a very American Canadian thing. But it does account for the revenue. Other ways around for the hotel motel, particularly with the cities and revenue tax that the cities will get from that. So usually government supports for stadiums or for different type of renovations from a government infrastructure standpoint that can be counted as revenue relatively. It depends on where and when. And, you know, here in the state of Georgia, it's a very different conversation. Once again, to compare it to, let's say, New York, New Jersey right now, for example. And so for the revenue part, a lot of it comes from, let's say, television revenue as well, which, of course, goes for like Fox and Telemundo here in the United States, or you talk about larger entities throughout Europe, South America, Africa, and Asia, and the rights that do help build the revenue on it. And it's kind of where it divvies from there, is that you have things that are more direct towards FIFA. Once again, from ticket sales, television broadcast revenue, corporate sponsorship, of course, from the global stance. So like, for example, Saudi Aramco, right, which obviously doesn't operate to a high degree here in the United States, but globally is a FIFA partner and has the rights to essentially every FIFA event, from the U17s all the way to the World Cup, to more of American-based partnerships, such as Bank of America, Home Depot, of course, right? Home Depot, based here, is hometown in his backyard. It's not going to let it happen, right? So you talk about those levels there of balancing those aspects. Particularly, for example, also you can able to sublet it, be able to almost sublease and subcorporate with different sponsorships. It's Qatar Airways has done for American Airlines over this past trip. So that's kind of one different elements of what you're talking about, the revenue sources. One of the key parts, I think, with the economic development as well is, like I said, this is the first time since Brazil that they've had multiple local organizing committees. It wasn't like that with Qatar. Go to the royal family, the end. It wasn't like that in Russia. Go to the Kremlin, the end. There wasn't the same type of logistical need and necessities that we have experienced, particularly here. That's what a lot of people in the knowledge sharing part of it have either moved to other parts of the industry, or you're talking about, like I said, you're a young person in Brazil, your first one, 2014, you're now a 12-year vet. You know, and 12 years is a very long time in knowledge sharing, let alone the 30 years we talk about in Atlanta, right? We're just generations at this point, right? And so those aspects, particularly in the economic sphere, that kind of I hope it gives a better understanding of what we're talking about with the economics from the FIFA and local organizing committee side of it, which, let's say, just Atlanta, for example, or Seattle, or one of these cities.
Thank you. So I would venture to say these communities that are helping spearhead this collaboration and this planning, they kind of serve like a connective tissue to push the goal over the line, right? So speaking of another connective tissue, the Beltline sits at the connective tissue of Atlanta's neighborhoods. How is the organization thinking about pedestrian and transit flow during the tournament, and what investments are being accelerated because of 2026, Natalie?
Yeah, so One of the things that we are very proud of at the Beltline is the fact that by the time FIFA comes to town, we will have had more than 17 miles out of the 22 miles completely finished for the trail. So that means that you can go from 75 on the northeast side down towards Piedmont Park, then down towards like Bill Kennedy Way, University Avenue, where Pittsburgh Yards is, around to Lee and White, up past Washington Park on the West Side Trail. And then we have, of course, the West Side Connector that takes you directly to the stadium. And so with having that type of connectivity, people can walk, they can ride their bikes to different areas of the Beltline. That is one of the reasons why we chose Pittsburgh Yards as a place to do our activation. Because we wanted something that was one, community oriented, and also we wanted to highlight a different part of the trail that may not get as much love as, like, say, the east side, because that has so much density. And so we are making investments in, like I mentioned, the opportunities that we have for small businesses to vend at events like this, and as well as, again, making sure that we keep those businesses in our pipeline for additional opportunities for after the World Cup leaves.
That's great. So you guys definitely make your way over to Pittsburgh Yards. It sounds like the activations are all going to be there. Don't miss out on that. Joe, earlier you talked about basically the long-term impact of major events like this. I think all of you all touched on it lightly, but I specifically would like to ask you, Atlanta's 1996 Olympics experience is still debated. Acceleration of development, but also significant displacement. How does that history inform how you're approaching the World Cup planning today?
Thank you. So I'm big on learning from other people's mistakes and not my own. Yeah. So for me, the only demo I'm doing is inside someone's home. If they want this wall removed, I'm just going to install a beam, right? I'm not big on destroying other people's communities. I'm not big on removing not even a tree that's been there for 200 years, right? That tree means something to somebody. I value everything that a community has because I remember my own community. Okay. And I know that every time when I go back to my own community and I see something different, I'm like, huh, okay. Right. So when customers come to me, my number one thing is to always ask them, okay, what would you like to keep here? And what do you definitely have to get rid of? Because then I know how to work with them. Right. And then I know how to offer services that are mainly against displacement of some sort. Okay. So if someone, for perfect example, let's say a customer comes to me and say, hey, we just bought, I don't know, 10 acres of land and we have a lot of trees there. But the tree is kind of, you can see it's in a path of someone's, day-to-day walk or on the path to someone's school or whatever the case is. Let's say the neighborhood kids use that trail to get to the school behind them, right? I'm going to say, okay, that's great. Well, guess what? As of January 1st, 2026, there's a law that's passed that says if you remove any amount of trees, you're going to have to pay a fine to get those removed. So then if they show me, okay, well, the amount of trees that they have to get replaced, I'm going to calculate and say, that's about $16,000 added on to your quote. Is that something you'll still like to do? Right? So things, I'm serious. I'm being very transparent here. So it's about preserving things while also giving a customer what they will like to keep and value, right? Like I said, one of the hardest parts about this job, yet most rewarding, is turning someone's dream into a reality. How can I do that while also keeping parts of the community that don't hurt you, right? But will hurt someone else if it's gone, right? So I always keep that in mind. And I think if a lot more company owners and developers and real estate guys thought of things like that, we would preserve a lot more of a community, especially if you're not going to replace it with anything. Okay. So, like, if you're displacing something, but not creating something like the Beltline, where you're actually creating more businesses, you're creating more employment for people, right? You're feeding communities. If you're not doing that, should you be doing it? That's what's causing displacement, right? Because now I can no longer live here. I can't afford here. I can't do anything here for me or my family. So that's one of the major things that I try to think about when I'm proposing to a customer. Hey, okay, I understand your goal. Let's look at things this way. Let's be more realistic about it. Okay.
I'd also like to add, I too like to learn from other people's mistakes. Sometimes it happens so that you learn from your own mistakes. And so what I will say is, when the Beltline first started to be built out in the old Fourth Ward area, we've seen a lot of displacement happen on that side of town due to rising costs, because when you bring in an amenity, everyone suddenly wants to be there, right? The Beltline is such a unique project because we connect 45 different neighborhoods, and all 45 of those neighborhoods have their own flavor, their own flair, their own culture. And so while Atlanta Beltline Inc. is the organization that's responsible for building out the trail and some of the other mandates that we have within affordable housing, as well as economic development numbers, one of the things that's really, really important to us is mitigating displacement. And so one of the things that we've done is we've created a land acquisition strategy. So when people contact me, they always say, "Oh, how can I get my business on the Beltline?" And it's just like you get a business in any other part of the city of Atlanta, because the Beltline doesn't own any property. Most of the property around the Beltline is owned by private development. And so the Beltline saw this and saw what happened in the old Fourth Ward on the east side and said, what can we do to try to mitigate displacement? And so we developed a land acquisition strategy, and we have about 90 acres of land in different parts of the Beltline. And what we're doing is we are purchasing land and then going out to the community, having a lot of talks with the community residents, business owners, neighborhood associations to talk through what do you want to see in your neighborhood? What do you want to keep? What's important to you? And then we put out a public RFP, and developers bid based on the RFP that has a lot of community input. And so we are currently working on a project, Murphy Crossing, which is in Adair Park. That's about 20 acres, I believe. It's where the old State Farmers Market used to be. And we did that process, and we're looking to have that become a proof of concept. We don't have that just yet, but that's just one of the ways that the Beltline is looking at, how do we make an impact when most of the things that you see around the trail is private development. And so purchasing development or purchasing land on our own, and being able to control the dirt, we can control what happens on that land. So we can create affordable housing, we can create affordable commercial space. So those are just some of the things that we're thinking about.
That was definitely very eye-opening for myself, because I was very curious about the gentrification pressure that you were experiencing in Old Fourth Ward and the east side of the Beltline. So that land acquisition strategy is something that I don't think a lot of us probably knew before she just said that. So that's definitely something to take away from here. Now, Jeremy, switching gears slightly. So I think we're all fans of soccer in some sort of way, but you do realize that the fan base skews much younger in comparison to many of the major American sports here, and it's also often more diverse. So with that being said, how does that demographic shift the economic opportunity for Atlanta's business community?
It is absolutely huge. I'll be frank about it, as a Black man in the space. We talk about what that looks like from a professional side, but from a personal side, was like to go to the stadium, was like to be engaged. I support Tottenham, which was, thank God we're still in the Prem. It was disgusting to watch Arsenal win a title. Disgusting to me through and through. I almost puked that day. But we're watching that conversation change where I'm very honest and candid with my own experience in soccer, where that came from FIFA 04. I saw an American flag. I saw a player for Tottenham that wore blue, Casey Keller, looking up, former US keeper. And that's how I became a depressed Tottenham fan. And for a lot of kids, that was the first entry point in the US. And watching that now change to be able to watch, and this is just frank, the first time I've ever seen in my history in Atlanta was watching Atlanta United win against Portland in 2018. I'd never seen a city win a title before in my life. And you watch how the Ben Stadium turns into something that MLS had never seen before in Major League Soccer. Black fans, be frank about it, Latino fans, gay fans, all come to one in the 72,000 person stadium. And you watch how other teams in the league, particularly in frank about it, which I think also leads to a double-edged sort of fans getting involved and engaged into it, but how many fans in the United States and Canada are getting involved in the local domestic leagues as well. Where, as Atlanta, like I said, in some cases, it can be much easier to watch the Premier League than it is to catch up with sometimes local teams within MLS or USL, United Soccer League, our second division team, which I think many soccer fans in the US doesn't know exists, you know, if you're not in the city that has it. And so I think one of the best things about the World Cup is that you have the educational piece. You have the piece for embracing other parts of culture that thrives throughout the rest of the world. And America can be a little bit of a new nuance to try to get to understand, right? And every city is very different. What I expect from going down the street to the Ben Stadium here in Atlanta compared to what I expect when I go to watch Austin play, which I saw last week, is a very different experience, but also a very fun experience. Whether you talk about just, and I'm bringing up Austin because it's fresh in my mind from last week, but, you know, just where the stadium is, particularly in Austin, where the facility is for the second team, which I think is probably the best usage of space I've ever seen for a team headquarters second team, where it's mini golf. It's fun. It's a place where I would want to be on your average Thursday if there isn't a game day. And I think when you talk about the usage of space, and particularly in the World Cup, where, you know, for many fans, if they have the opportunity to come here to do so, right, Atlanta is, until you get down to Miami or you get to Houston, we are the only thing in the Southeast during that time, essentially, of the World Cup. And so we'll see the migration of folks from Nashville, from Charlotte, from Raleigh, Birmingham, all the way to New Orleans in many cases to be here. And you'll see younger fans want to be engaged in that. And so I think that there's an opportunity there from the city. There's an opportunity there for many businesses to say, hey, you know, how do we incorporate that in ways that, you know, soccer is loved in music. We forget that, I mean, America's one thing, but the second largest rap country is France, who will be a favorite, right? They listen to drill music in France as well. I'm dead serious. So, like, I mean, that's, you watch them, that's what they're doing. Yeah. And so there's no reason why we can't watch that incorporation from a global perspective. And you watch how you're able to juxtapose that with the local aspect of it. And I'm excited to see the league get younger, get blacker, more Latino, more Asian. That is something I think that is what's right with the United States and should continue in the sport. And we'll continue to see it going forward.
Just a personal anecdote. A few years ago, I used to be a Atlanta Falcons season ticket holder. And I know. And I think this may have been in like 2017 or something. As you know, you go to the Falcon Stadium and there are a lot of fans for the other team. And we were at a game, I think we were playing Green Bay or something, and there was like a group of guys sitting in front of us with their, you know, regalia on. And we're obviously cheering for the Falcons, they're cheering for the Packers. But then there was like an announcement about Atlanta United, and the entire stadium just went wild. And so I think that is a true testament to, one, just how much of a transplant city Atlanta is. So a lot of people move here and they already have their allegiances. Atlanta United is such a new franchise that it was able to captivate a lot of people who may not have been soccer fans before. So even if they were fans of different NFL teams, everyone rallied around Atlanta United. So that was just something really interesting to see. Even if they don't show up for my Falcons, they cheered for Atlanta United.
A win is a win. I remember when they got their first star. A win is certainly a win. So at this time, I'd like to open up if there are any questions online, if we have received any questions online. And while we wait for the questions online, do we have any questions in the audience? No questions online. All right. We'll start with.
So thank you to all the panelists for your insight. It's been just very eye-opening, the different perspectives that you brought to the table. So my question is actually piggybacking off of the Beltline. So unaware of the land acquisition play. I guess my question is, as a mechanism, like how does the Beltline make money to like cover projects like that, or is it funded from the city, or how does that kind of work?
So we are funded by what's called a tax allocation district, a TAD, and we have a charter that tells us, how we can spend our funding, but we also have private donors as well. And so there are some funds that we're able to utilize from maybe bonds, and this is certainly not my purview, so I can't talk in depth about it. But the primary pot of money that we utilize is TAD funding, and then we also have private development and other sources as well.
Thank you so much, panelists, for your time. This question is really geared towards you guys. So post World Cup, what are some of the things you're going to be looking at during the World Cup to inform how you guys are going to operate for like the next Super Bowl or next kind of community event from the World Cup?
So we'll be looking at everything. I think all eyes are on Atlanta and the other host cities. I think that I feel like Atlanta, like we have a lot of culture that we will be able to bring when we have the international visitors come in. But I think that what we'll be looking at is flow of traffic. How are people actually getting around? How many people are actually using the Beltline to get from point A to point B. We have trail counters. So that's how we keep up with the number of visits that we have each year. So we have about 2.5 million visits per year on the East Side Trail. And we'll be looking at, how many people are coming, where they're going. We'll be looking at how some of our marketplace activations perform. We're actually going to be doing a food and beverage marketing readiness program for Beltline F&B businesses. So we're looking at things like how's your menu set up? Is it optimized well? How is your Google pages set up or Google ads? And what we're hoping for is, again, when we have that influx of people coming in, if you're able to operate at that level, then when we can utilize the World Cup as a way to test some of the things that we're thinking about, and then be able to adjust those things when we have a Super Bowl come into town in 2018 or 2028, not 2018.
Solid. One of the biggest things that we're working on right now is partnerships with many companies. I'll give you a solid example. When I got a whiff, excuse me, that Airbnb was partnering with many apartment complexes to say, hey, if you list your apartment for the World Cup by X, Y, and Z date, we'll give you $1,000 bonus cash. I immediately started going to the leasing offices and say, hey, my company will partner with your tenants to paint, to remove and install better flooring, if they have carpet, whatever the case is, right? And what we're promoting there is exactly what Airbnb is doing. Hey, we're prepping you for Airbnb, but at the same time, we're showing you what we can do now so that you can also bring us back on the tail end when football comes around. Right. So it's like, hey, we've done it already. We've already partnered with this company. We're going to do it again. We're going to come in early, just like Airbnb did. We're going to offer incentives, things of that nature. And we're also doing it with residentials as well. Right. So it's about going into communities earlier, partnering with them, creating a longevity plan. Right. That's aligned with whatever's coming down the pipeline for that community. Right. And truly understanding, well, hey, my book of business is this now, but 2-3 years, this is what we're forecasting, because that's how you truly create a forecast pipeline in certain industries. You got to understand what's going on in the community. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. That was a great question. You have a question online? Yep. All right. Oh, okay. That's even better.
Thank you guys for today and the information. I think I just want to say, Joe, Future opening up is a big deal. That's another Atlanta connection. Yeah. He's huge in Europe. Yeah. That was a nice touch by FIFA. Whoever booked him. Yeah. So it's really two questions. So I think Atlanta's pretty used to hosting big events, but typically it's mostly one-day events, Super Bowls, huge concerts. But this is 6 weeks? About 6 weeks. So what level of planning goes into a 6-week international event like the World Cup? And what gives Atlanta the edge over other cities?
I can definitely start with that, but to answer your question to start first, the big thing about halftime performances, and I think the biggest, and this is something I think overarching to actually answer the question a little more, is that, what the biggest difference I think is you're meshing two different systems of sports ecosystems. Here, what we do stateside and in Canada, and what we do and what the rest of the world does, which is not easy to really understand. And as FIFA Master, I could say cold-handedly, like even both professionally and getting paid for it, and also just these are my people helping on the side. The questions that are asked that, as an American, to me are just easy to answer, but are just foreign concepts. Once again, Future's a great example of that to answer, because, I mean, one, I'm from here. Future's the greatest rapper of all time. One, but so personal. For me, for rap. It 100% is, and I have no shame about it. But one thing that, and I have no shame about that whatsoever. Like through and through, the world will have the possibility of hearing some songs that are near and dear to my heart. Hopefully, the 0.01%. But the big thing to that is, like, we talk about the FIFA eyes, what sells and what they're thinking America is. And I think that a lot of this concept is what the thought America is, what America really is on a day-to-day basis. Because frankly, for many in my situation has been, you have people that think of LA, New York, Miami. They don't know about Kansas City. They have zero clue about Philadelphia in many cases. You look at, the Bay Area to think of just Silicon Valley, but don't realize that they're playing in Santa Clara. And Santa Clara is not an easy drive to get to from San Francisco or from SFO or Oakland if you're flying into that as well. And so a lot of the level setting on that part, and that goes back to the question of, from the coordination piece of, and I disagree with the context that Infantino said 154 Super Bowls. I think that's kind of ridiculous, because very much so an event like this is coordinated, not just Super Bowl, because Super Bowl is, I think in itself kind of is its own entity truly that is a different magnitude on a single day. At the same time, to do it over that time period is draining. And you talk about doing it logistically, what makes Atlanta much more advantageous is that for staffing, Even though we'll be based most of the staff will be based out in Dallas, and for the media side, particularly in production teams, and the headquarters has been in Coral Gables, Miami, for the start for the local organizing side, particularly in the U.S., with the Canadian Mexican teams as well in Mexico City and Toronto, respectively. That one of the biggest issues with the coordination and one of the biggest strengths of it is that everything's here and everything isn't. Right. So you talk about from a global perspective where Asian fans who are on a significantly no way around it, but watching the game at 2 a.m. in the morning is hard. Simply put as that. You look at the coordination of how do you work with that with the teams and federations? How do you work with that with the stadiums and abilities, right? Where a game in Los Angeles, in Seattle is more comforting for that compared to a game in Atlanta or Kansas City, for example, because the time difference does matter, as someone who's been on like 80,000 of them this past week. But on the logistics side of that, you are kind of mixing two cultures that don't necessarily just mix very often. Right. And we're talking about, in many cases, from, as some people say, the Ivory Tower in Switzerland, right? Where, and me living in Switzerland was, as an American, the unique experience of it. But there's some things that the Swiss or many within the cohort of the FIFA world, even abroad, don't understand about the US, and has been a learning curve. And also on the US side, where folks that are used to college football, which to me is still my favorite sport through and through, but tell the SEC guys, what is necessary for Spain is a challenge of bumping heads. And there's no way around that, where one side thinks they know better than the other side. And I think that's been, and a lot of the issues that's spilled onto the public has been an issue, where I think going back to, and like I said, Infantino actually met the man a few times. Actually a nice guy through and through, like from my own experience. But some of the comments are made, like the college football one recently, like, oh, we're used to this. I'm a Trojan, USC, fight on. And my season tickets were significantly less than the number you gave me to when I was in college. So things that we know, and it's not just also say that isn't what happens over here, are the little things that I think we're trying to understand and mitigate in most cases, particularly also said for the federations, like I said, going logistically. How do you tell a federation that's used to, taking, in Qatar, everything was within an hour. Solely put, everything that was necessary, I think the longest distance for anything was almost 90 minutes from the farthest stadium to the central, the business district, or just the airport in Doha. You not go that far, and you're having teams that are having to fly from Mexico into the West Coast. The Uzbeks, for example, who are playing in Mexico City as well. That's a 3.5 hour flight, and that's not an easy flight for many as they go into Altuve, Mexico City, which is a tough place to play in. Just simply put, so the altitude, which the NBA players learn really quickly in our NBA Mexico games, right? And so Russell Westbrook said it himself, right? Like simply that this is tough to play in, and so you're mitigating those aspects from the performance standpoint, from the commercial standpoint, and from this fan experience, because it's simply no way to put it, especially with the recent rise in upwards airline costs, with the current issues, particularly with oil and things of nature, and just Spirit, of course, falling is also, I think, is a crucial piece just before World Cup. That how much that's taking on the cost to get from Miami to get into Newark or get into LaGuardia? How much is it going to cost to say, oh, I want to watch these games of Ghana versus England one day, and I'm going to watch France versus Senegal. I want to go watch Spain versus Cabo Verde. And that ticket is going to cost you from Atlanta to New York significantly. I'm not sure you guys have seen it, but it's not a fun one, no matter who you're flying on. And yeah, exactly. And so you're talking about trying to navigate that for a fandom, for an audience, both domestic and international, that is now in a time that they're not sure about and haven't experienced itself, right? And we haven't experienced this since Russia, but also very different context of going to Russia in 2018. Different, no, it would have, but different world. It truly is. And that's, I think, a shock that I think that many people are not just ready for yet, but we just had to go through it. I think is the best way to describe it. And, I think we'll see how it plays out very much so over the next few days, particularly as teams start to come here, start to get a comic to start acclimate themselves. And also we're seeing the friendlies. I think that before the World Cup, I think it's important there too. For one end, I hope the U.S. does well against Senegal and Germany for our sake. But also, how many fans are going to be willing to, are able to go from Charlotte to Chicago, right? And that's a very adamant question. Say Charlotte, Chicago, got to go out west to LA and Seattle to watch the USA play. Those are a lot. That's a lot of money, a lot of hotel ticket, a lot of tickets on the air side, and a lot of hotel dollars that at this moment and point, and to be honest and frank about it, can be logistically challenging for just the consumer and just the fan, let alone on this side of it.
Thank you for that very detailed answer. And I'm afraid I might have to agree with Jeremy that Future is the best rapper ever. Anyway, as we close out in 30 seconds each, please, in 10 years from now, what does a successful World Cup legacy look like for Atlanta's economy and its communities? And what's the version of the future you're most worried about if we get this wrong? 30 seconds each.
0 is the number I'm gonna give. That's the number of players that are playing for the United States in 2026. 3 was the number that we're playing for 22 in Qatar from the state of Georgia. Let's start from the talent side. I want more Georgia boys and Georgia gals involved in the ecosystem. 2, soccer is a wonderful sport. It's a great sport. But one thing I'm very cognizant of is that it can be considered a rich and white sport in the U.S. How we break those barriers down logistically, figuratively, financially, and culturally are what I hope for. And also, we don't have to wait 10 years. You got to talk about 31. If we're in the same place we're in 31, we failed.
Can you repeat the question? 30 seconds.
10 years from now,
Okay.
what does a successful World Cup legacy look like for Atlanta's economy and its communities? And what's the version of the future you're most worried about if we get this wrong?
I think that success for me would look like there are a significant number of small businesses that have been heavily positively impacted by the influx of people coming into Atlanta for the World Cup. And then in 10 years, they're still here. I think that the rate at which business closes is just astronomical. And so if we could provide resources to help businesses prepare for an event like this, and then continue to help them along the way and help them build resiliency, and they're still here in 10 years, I think that that will be a success. And then the inverse of that would be, what was it? What do I see as a
What's the version of the future you're most worried about if we get this wrong?
if the version that I'm most worried about if we get this wrong is a belt line that loses its culture. I think that I always say to people, what would the belt line look like if it was all national chains? And if we don't continue to support small businesses, continue to uplift them, then that's where we're headed. And so I think that if in 10 years from now, the Beltline is filled with national chains, I think we have failed.
Um, Love a good Longhorn Steakhouse. What's wrong with Cheesecake Factory? But for me, success of the World Cup looks like some sort of reparations for Atlanta folks, right? For our people, right? I feel like there's always a chance for us to win. And these small businesses, if leveraged properly throughout this time frame, have an opportunity to win, not just for themselves, but for the culture, for the community. That's what success from the World Cup looks like to me. Failure, the complete opposite of that. If we don't take advantage of it, if we don't put into our own community, right, we won't see any form of reparations for our people. And I'm just thinking, okay, y'all seen how big Bad Bunny was last year, is this year too, right? But what he did for Puerto Rico last year, this guy said, look, ICE is taking everybody up there. I know Hispanic people are going to come to my concert. I'm going to host the whole thing in Puerto Rico. That's what he did, right? And from that one Coliseum that he did his concerts, literally 30 plus businesses grew in the island, not just in that city, in the island. And every time tourists go to Puerto Rico, till this day, they're doing the Bad Bunny stops to every single one of those businesses. Bad Bunny's not even profiting from those businesses. That's the island that's eating. That's some form of reparation. You get what I'm saying? If Atlanta can do that, we would be golden. But we have to do that. We have to pour into our own communities. We have to support our communities. Right.
Support some small businesses future.
Support him at.
We might have to get a future Gunna combo on that one, you know.
Gunna performed at the. This is part of another issue that's kind of funny, but you guys do know that Gunna performed for the U.S. Opener, right? For revealing the roster.
Oh, I don't think most people.
Exactly.
Lauren Hill.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think also just like one last thing to it. I think one of the things that going back to the demographic question, I think the failure is I think that U.S. soccer has not capitalized at all on that. I think there's been very much so how they've gone about it. Like I said, that no one knew that the roster reveal, like it was leaked previously, but it was revealed technically yesterday in New York, was not mentioned. And that says something where your own populace doesn't know that Gunna performed at it.
That's kind of crazy because I knew Neymar made the Brazilian national team. I did not know our roster was revealed yesterday.
Exact, which was absolutely wonderful. Yes.
I got a question. How does the because I know the new headquarters for the U.S. men's national team is here.
Global, entire U.S. soccer, all of U.S. soccer.
Here,
Yeah.
so how does that tie in? It was just unveiled like a few weeks ago, right?
The boys are there right now. So yeah, so they flew down yesterday, one or two. Either way, they're over there right now. Yes, it's incorporated because the U.S. will be based to start the friendlies there against Senegal in Germany, but it will be based out west in Irvine for the work. And logistically, it makes sense because they're playing solely on the West Coast for the group stages. But it is a wonderful thing. It is what has been asked for by U.S. soccer for years. Having an FA county is absolutely wonderful. For my business, is absolutely perfect, but is wonderful for being logistically a place that everyone can go to. And I think this can be utilized very well because we're already having our youth camps there. Which I think like when people think about like a federation, you gotta remember it starts from really the age of 13, 14, the identification of boys and girls then. And it's gone onward, right? I mean, I'm watching now some of my own clients actually at the U.S. and Canadian levels from the youth side that have been identified, which I know is very foreign compared to the rest of American sports, but is very common, particularly in like, for example, U.S. basketball, right? For elite prospects that are going to go to the NBA draft here and there, they do play for the U.S. basketball at a point, right? At the youth level. So think about that. But in the soccer world, what it does is it gives a home for everything to be done in-house in a place where it's logistically possible. As we know that Atlanta is a logistical, not just for the airport part of it, particularly with Hartsfield, where was it 80% of all the U.S. population is within like
2 hours.
2 hours, yeah, that ballpark. Yeah, and so it's the same conversation there, and even better for international. You can get to Paris, you can get to London, get to Frankfurt, you can get to Barcelona and Madrid, the cities that are core, and Rome, that are core to our European players. But players in the U.S., American players are playing in Europe. They're able to get home on one flight, whether it be Delta or respective airline, and it makes a huge logistical change and difference as well.
We got to wrap up actually very soon, but definitely ask your questions of the panelists afterwards. I wanted to also give the floor to Natalie L. Jones, a word from one of our panelists this evening.
Yeah, so thank you. We are hosting, like I mentioned, Beltline Fest, which is going to be on June 20th and 21st, which is Juneteenth and Father's Day weekend. We'll be hosting it at Pittsburgh Yards. And we're expecting about 10,000 people to be there. And so we're going to have a lot of different activations. We're going to have community groups represented, small businesses, food vendors, makers. And so this QR code will take you to our landing page, our FIFA business landing page, where if you own a small business and you're interested in participating in Beltline Fest, scan the code and apply for one of the applications. In addition to Beltline Fest, we are also hosting activations at all 4 of our Beltline Marketplace sites. So those are at Aleen on the southwest side, Pittsburgh Yards, Krog, and then under Freedom Parkway. And we will be hosting activations for 5 different dates. That's going to be June 13th, June 20th and 21st, and then June 27th, and then July 15th for the semifinal. And so again, if you're a small business owner and you're interested in vending on the Beltline, that's one of the top questions that businesses ask me. How can I vend on the Beltline? And the answer is that you can't. The Beltline is treated as a City of Atlanta park, which means that you have to have a permit to do any type of vending. So for all of you who are wondering, how do I vend on the Beltline? Scan the code, sign up for a slot, and come out and celebrate soccer with us.
Thank you for that PSA. I hope you guys get out on the Beltline. Make sure you have your permits right, because they will come and get you. Last but not least, everybody knows we are a nonprofit. We are the Emerging 100 of North Metro Atlanta. And what we do, we are not paid for. So we do need charitable donations to keep programming like this running, keeping the lights on. And we are grateful for any donations that you provide to us online or any medium. So this QR code that I am displaying will take you to our Give Butter page, where you can donate to the North Metro Atlanta chapter of the Emerging 100. I'll give you 5 seconds to scan it if you need to. All right. And lastly, we had a wonderful conversation this evening, and I know you guys want to keep the conversation going. You can follow us at Emerging 100 NMA on social media, or you can go to our website, https://www.e100northmetro.org, and join us for our next webinar. This has been a wonderful evening. I'm your host, Nelson Raphael, the Economic Empowerment Chair, signing off. Goodbye. Great job to you guys.